Welcome to the Multiamory podcast. I'm Jase.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Dedeker.
We believe in looking to the future of relationships, not maintaining the status quo of the past.
Whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, swinging, casually dating, or if you just do relationships differently, we see you, and we're here for you.
On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we are answering a question from one of our Patreon supporters. If you want the opportunity to ask a question on the show, become one of our patrons at patreon.com/multiamory. We will be doing this for the next couple months, releasing an extra episode each week, answering a listener's question, and we are really excited to hear from you all on what you think of this new format.
Quick disclaimer, we have spent a lot of time studying healthy relationship communication and thinking about these things, but we're also not mind readers. Our advice is based solely on the limited information that we have, so please take it with a grain of salt and make your own decisions.
Every situation is unique. Of course, we always encourage you to use your own judgment, seek professional help if needed. You are the only true expert on your own life. Your feelings, your decisions are your own, and bear in mind that these questions have been edited for time and clarity.
Today's question: any advice for people coming to consensual non-monogamy because a partner fell in love with someone else while they were still monogamous? For context, I've been in a monogamous relationship with the same person for 25 years. We never identified with the concept of emotional cheating, so I was fine with my partner having emotional intimacy with someone he works with. Recently, the emotional intimacy evolved and sexual intimacy was desired, so we're transitioning to consensual non-monogamy. Now I am wondering what my relationship to polyamory is beyond just being okay with my partner practicing it. I'm old enough to have missed all the dating apps, and the idea of going out and trying to meet someone to be polyamorous with in my small town feels very contrived. And this is from Differentiating in the Desert.
I love that.
Wow.
I want to talk about differentiation really quick, just in case people aren't familiar. Yeah, the differentiation is this psychology concept of, I suppose I would call it maybe a growing up process that we need to go through in literally differentiating ourselves as a distinct person from others. And where this becomes relevant in relationships is things like being able to sit with a partner's feelings, like if they're angry, if they're sad, or if they're disappointed in us, and being able to let them have their feelings, but not getting caught up in, oh, but that defines who I am, for instance, right? If my partner's disappointed in me, it means that I'm a bad person. So that's just one example, but I do think of differentiation as this process that helps us to maintain separate identity in relationship and helps prevent us from going down pathways of unhealthy codependence. Does that seem like that tracks?
It does.
Yeah.
I do wonder if in terms of the differentiation that's happening here, if this person is differentiating from the idea of polyamory versus actually doing it in some form or fashion, or if they're differentiating from this idea of them as a monogamous person versus this idea of them as a non-monogamous person.
Both are valid.
It makes me think of, I'm only now recently getting some perspective on some past relationships of mine where I realized that the person that I was dating was non-monogamous just because of me, though, not necessarily because that was their own identity or their own interest, and where maybe they were good at it, maybe they even enjoyed it, but it was a little bit of like the only reason they're doing this is because that's part of the conditions of dating me, of like needing to be okay with some form of non-monogamy. And in some cases that was okay. And in some cases, I think that didn't work out so great in the end, if that makes sense. And I've been chewing on this a lot recently, thinking about those sort of things.
Yeah, gosh, that's great. I'm excited for us to dig into this one. We're going to take a quick moment to just say thank you to you, Differentiating in the Desert, for asking your question. And also thank you for being a patron and supporting this show. The Patreon, honestly, from our second year of doing the show, that was the thing that kind of tipped the scales to, this is something real that people care about and that we could keep doing back then when we had like 10 patrons or whatever it was, right? But it's just grown so much since then and been such an amazing community that has allowed us to keep doing this show, keep growing it, and continue to put this out 10 years later every week is really amazing. And that's really thanks to all of you who are patrons. And if you're interested in joining that amazing community, you can do that at multiamory.com/join or patreon.com/multiamory. Become a patron there. There's a lot of really cool perks, but of course, the best of all is just getting to be part of the community and connecting with other people who are patrons of this show. So thank you so much for that.
Something I really appreciate about this question is I feel like I get a sense of a lot of clarity from this question, honestly. Maybe there's something about being very clear about the fact that, they didn't really ever get on board with the concept of emotional cheating or getting on board with like, oh, okay, this is growing and changing. And so we're transitioning, but also being very clear about, but trying to make myself do this feels contrived. It doesn't really feel like me. And I don't know. I think these are all points where I see a lot of people struggle and get hung up and get really confused. And I get a sense of clarity here. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's just something I'm making up, but I kind of get that impression. And this makes me think about how I think there's been this aphorism that's gotten tossed around a little bit that non-monogamy or being polyamorous is less about you having a desire to date multiple people. And it's more about how you handle when your partner is dating other people or has other partners. And so in that regard, I feel like the question is less about this person needing to go force themselves to go out and try to meet someone. And it seems like it's about doing what they're already doing, which is kind of meeting their partner where they are and sort of handling this particular transition in the relationship.
At the very least, it seems like this person is very level-headed about the whole concept of their partner wanting to be in an intimate relationship with somebody else. And maybe they're just presenting that here, but I appreciate how well presented that is and that it seems like they have a good head on their shoulders and are at least approaching this calmly and understanding that it's not necessarily about them. It's just about the transition. My head initially went to going online and finding people and communities outside of simply just the small town in which you were based and potentially finding some support and then also finding other people who are maybe in similar situations to you or who are just starting their own non-monogamous journey. Of course, we have various resources for that, but there are a lot of resources out there. There are absolutely groups where people are monogamous, but their partners are polyamorous. And so that could be something that you could seek out as well. I also do wonder if there's a possibility of creating intimate emotional attachments with people other than your significant other and just kind of seeing where that takes you. Because maybe that doesn't need to necessarily feel contrived. I understand this idea of like, I'm just going to go out on a date because I feel like I have to now because my partner is doing that too. But if you could try to give yourself permission maybe to put yourself out there a little bit more vulnerably than you would have otherwise, simply because that door is now open, and see where that takes you, whatever that may mean to you, if that's simply just emotional or if it becomes something more.
I mean, that's part of differentiation also, is building a support network and a social life outside of a romantic relationship.
There you go.
Right. And it's hard to say how much this person might already have that or not. But I do think that's a great point to bring up. One thing I want to touch on just so briefly, even though I don't think this is really the heart of the question here, but the phrase old enough to have missed all the dating apps, there is no too old for dating apps, really. Like, if you don't want to do them, totally fine. If you're not interested in dating anyone else, like, also totally fine. That's the part I really want to get into. But I just want to say, like, there are people of all ages on dating apps. And so don't feel like that option is not open to you. However, the thing I want to get into is that the idea of saying, yeah, maybe I'm polyamorous or consensually non-monogamous or whatever label you want to use, to say I am that because that's the relationship I have with my partner. But that doesn't mean that you have to be seeking a relationship right now. it's like how a person could be monogamous and be single. Like, it's like, yeah, if I were to date, it would be monogamously, but I'm just not really looking right now. I'm fine. Maybe I'll be fine forever not doing that. Like, that's also a valid option. And I just want to bring this up as someone who myself, for the last, I guess, like 3 years now, haven't really dated anyone else, while Dedeker has had other partners during that time. And I've really enjoyed that change of pace in these last few years of being like, yeah, I've gotten to look at that time, because there is a little bit of differentiation in terms of what I spend my time doing, instead of it always by default just being with my monogamous partner, which is at least how I used to approach a lot of relationships, that there is kind of this like, okay, they've got something else going on. What do I get to do with that time? Not what do I have to do to like entertain myself, but what do I get to do? And so for me, that's been things like, if Dedeker's out of town for the weekend, making plans with my friends to be like, yeah, let's stay up late playing video games, or right, or like, oh, let's
learning a new thing is what I feel like you do a ton of.
Yeah.
I've often done that where it's like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for this, online at your own pace kind of class and just do like a bunch of hours of that in an evening while Dedeker is gone. Right. Or something like that. Like, I've really enjoyed just getting to kind of reclaim this. Ooh, I've got all this freedom to kind of do whatever I want. And I like getting to connect more with my friends. I've even had some situations where it's like, maybe I've gone on what's like maybe a date that's ended up being new friends. Or I suppose it could be the other option of connecting with people to be friends with socially, and maybe that turns into an interest in dating. Like, what I love about the way that I'm existing in polyamory and non-monogamy right now is more just that I have those options, but that I don't feel this obligation to be acting on them all the time. And I think when I was younger and this was newer, I felt more of that, like, I need to be out there taking advantage of this and doing all the dating. And now I just love that I have those options and those are there, but I don't have to be doing anything about them if I don't want. But if something happens, I can. Like, I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, I am really drawn in by specifically this person saying that I'm wondering what my relationship to polyamory is here. And my relationship to polyamory when I was 21 is very different than it is when I turned 30, which is very different from what it is to me now. So maybe there's just a sense of curiosity and openness and knowing that that relationship may change, and it probably will change. And that's okay.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, differentiating in the desert. I was wondering where in the desert you lived, because Tucson, where I lived, where
Emily's
I grew
a
up.
desert child.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I
Child
love the
of the
desert. I really do. It's beautiful there. But Tucson is, large, so it probably isn't there, but maybe you're close to me, or just close in spirit. I love that as well. So for all of you out there, the best place to share your thoughts with other listeners is in this episode discussion channel in our Discord server, or you can post in our private Facebook group. You can get access to these groups and join our exclusive community by going to patreon.com/multiamory. In addition, you can share with us publicly on TikTok, X, Facebook, or Instagram. Multiamory is created and produced by Jase, Lindgren, Dedeker, Winston, and me, Emily Matlack. Our production assistants are Rachel Shennework and Carson Collins. Our theme song is Forms I Know I Did by Josh and Anand from the Fractal Cave EP. The full transcript is available on this episode's page on multiamory.com.